Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. We get together most weekday mornings at 8 o'clock Central. Today is Thursday, July 10th, 2025. And you can see on the shared screen in the background the 509pacific.org website, which isn't instrumental really for our topic today, but our little note screen here is. So we're going to go through it, and this isn't a BS pitch, so hear me out, and I think you'll agree by the time we conclude today. I'm going to be able to show you what the key is to having a successful branch office. So some of you may be new today, so let's backtrack a little bit and build context, then we'll get into the topic. So we have a 501c3 nonprofit. No surprise, right here it is, 509 Pacific. We've received a grant. Grant has three elements, or what they say, three mandates. We're supposed to help improve financial literacy, and the focus is on business related financial literacy. So it's not like going and teaching elementary students how to count coins, but how to prepare adults that either own a business or that are looking to own a business key financial principles, things that are probably common sense to you and I, but not everyone knows. The second element or second mandate of the grant is to provide free shelf corps to entrepreneurs. There's information about that right here at the top of 509 Pacific. And then those of you who are distribution partners, you're involved with number one and number two. You can give away these shelf corps. And then thirdly, we then want to use that knowledge that they now have and the shelf corps that they now own to be able to go get access to capital. And we provide number three. So you all are instrumental in number one and two as distribution partners. We take care of number three. All right, so with that being said, there's a recent change that we've been talking about, and historically we've had resellers. And we continue to have resellers. And in fact, if you scroll down here a bit on 509 Pacific, you can even let us know if you're interested in being a reseller. It's the third box here. But resellers have worked out fine. These are dabblers. These are people that are accountants, attorneys, whatever their background is. But on the side, they do a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and then they get paid. So that's fine. So we're going to continue to have the dabblers. Dabblers are welcome. But for our more serious partners, they are typically gravitating over into the new role, which we call the branch office. Now, the branch office operates in many ways similar to what the reseller does, but it's their community involvement, their local presence that's a significant difference, and that's going to tie into our topic today. So if you have any questions in the background, let us know. Just type it into the Q&A. It's like a chat box of Zoom. I always get asked this. I went ahead and added it. A lot of you will ask, well, how do branch offices get paid? They get it paid actually twice for every grant participant. So if we tie back, they actually don't get paid for teaching financial literacy. We use that to fill our funnel, but we're not paid to go out and teach. We do free education. But we are paid, you are paid to provide the free shelf corp. So the grant covers the entire cost of the shelf corp. You just add a processing fee, and so that gets you paid. And so you're getting paid upfront for each shelf corp that you give away to the client through a processing fee that is paid by the client. And then as we conduct number three, you're paid 5% of each grant participant's capital raise. And that's where the biggest money is, of course, right? So we're guaranteeing them a minimum of 100,000. So at 100,000, if you're getting 5%, that's 5,000 for each person you give a free shelf corp to. But many of our clients want a much larger capital raise, and we have a number of large capital raises that we're working on now that are not only over $1 million, but multi-million. So of course, the bigger the deal, the more money you make on the back end. So that's all background information. That's not necessarily new, but for those of you that are new joining us today, if you're not up to speed, that's probably important for the rest of this to make sense. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, type it into the Q&A. All right, so our topic today is about proposals. And I'm sure you've all heard of the word proposal, but proposals are the instrumental way that our branch offices develop strategic relationships. So we're going to dig into proposals. So again, if you're a reseller, you're welcome to be here, you're welcome to listen, but resellers are not supported in proposals, but our branch offices, this is our bread and butter. Maybe you don't think it's that important, but I'll soon, I think, convince you otherwise. So let's talk about proposals. So, of course, we're talking about business proposals, not marriage proposals, right? So, business proposals, what do we need to know? Well, and there's a lot in this number one. I thought about breaking it out, but when we present a business proposal, it's going to be from your branch office to a key influencer, a bank, a chamber of commerce, so forth. But what does a proposal have in it? It's not a business plan. Don't confuse business plans with proposals. But a proposal is going to explain to the key influencer what we do, how we're different, in other words, our strategic differentiation, how they benefit. So what's in it for the key influencer? Why would they want to collaborate? And then also the process. For those of you that have been involved with more complicated sales propositions, what you know is that in many cases, decisions like these are not made by an individual. So let's say that you and I, let's say you start a branch office and we want to go to the local chamber of commerce and we want to develop a strategic relationship with the local chamber of commerce. Well, how does that happen? Well, your point of entry into that organization is typically going to be the executive director. I actually used to be an executive director of a chamber at one time, but that's unrelated. But the executive director is normally a W-2 employee of the chamber. Are they the decision maker, though? No, usually not. Sometimes, but usually not. It's usually the chamber board of directors. So that's why the proposal is so important, because we need to have something to explain to the executive director, but also something, in that example, something for the executive director to take to the board. Because in many cases, you're not going to be in the room when the executive director is presenting this to the board of directors. So we have to make sure that we have a document that explains from A to Z. Because if all we're going to do is sit down with the executive director and try to verbally get them up to speed to go pitch our pitch to the board, we're in trouble, right? It's probably not going to work. But the proposal lays it all out there. By a show of yes or no in the Q&A, have any of you in the past been involved with using proposals in a business development format? So Anthony and Art and B, we've had 543. Just a yes or no. And it's okay if you haven't. We have the templates. We've already worked through. But those of you that have, like Mr. Certain and Mr. Burwell, a lot of you know this is golden. This is what makes you, along with having your local office, so you have that local presence, this is what's going to connect your branch office to these key influencers. Proposals are incredibly important. When I was first getting started with this, I started by developing proposals for libraries. Why would the library want me to come in and present? So then the library would promote it, and I'd have 20, 30, 40 people in the damn library on a Saturday morning that I'm pitching to. So it can work not only for banks and chambers, but really any key influencer. It's a big, big deal. And so that's what connects your branch off, in most cases, your branch office to the key influencers, is a well-written proposal. Now, again, I want to differentiate a proposal from a business plan. We can't get lazy. So when we develop each proposal, it is targeted to the specific recipient. So I remember one that I did a while back, and it was for a Bank of the Ozarks. And so I misspelled Ozark because they actually changed their name from Ozark to OZK or something. I'm pulling from memory many years ago. But the business proposal isn't something that we just develop once and then print out. It needs to be altered to be relevant to the specific recipient, and it needs to address that problem that they have that we're going to help them solve. So when we talk about working with banks, you and I are a gold mine to the banks because the banks already have people coming to apply for loans. Only about 1 out of 10 make it through that process and get an approval. So they have about 9 out of 10, and that number could vary by bank or banker. But in general, the majority of their loan applicants don't get approved. So they can refer those loan applicants to the local branch office. We can work with them, what we call being a technical advisor. So then we can work with them. We can provide them a free shelf corp. We can provide the technical advisory services so they qualify, and then we can send that prior decline right back to that bank for approval. Some of you get very confused, and you shouldn't. You still get paid the same way. So it doesn't matter where the funding comes from, you're still paid the same. So some of you got really caught up and off track on that yesterday. So the proposals are not generic, they're specific. Now, there's a lot of similarity in one proposal to the next because what we do is what we do, of course. But we will provide you those templates and help you with that. That's a very important part of our role in supporting the branch offices. Now, you don't have to develop a proposal each time you get a referral from the bank, right? We just need that initial proposal to create that relationship, that referral relationship, right? So I don't want you to think we have to keep developing proposals over and over for the same partner. We just need to develop it once to get the partner on board. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, for those of you that are a little more sophisticated, like Anthony and Matthew and Joseph, those of you that have been involved with proposals before, there are actually two types of proposals. There's called solicited and unsolicited. So I'll give you an example. When I first got out of graduate school, I worked for Deloitte and Touche out of Minneapolis. Now it's just called Deloitte, one of the largest accounting and consulting firms in the world, in the nation for sure. And so we would have to respond. Well, let me rephrase it. So we had clients, big clients, like the state of Florida was our client. So not some business in the state of Florida, the state of Florida was our client. So all the employees of the state of Florida that had health benefits, we were responsible for. So we weren't the health insurance company. There's Aetna and United and Cigna and all those that provide the insurance. But we would put together a proposal request, and then the insurance companies would submit a proposal to us of how they propose to offer benefits to the state of Florida employees. So that's what you call a solicited proposal. So a solicited proposal is whereby the key influencer is asking for something. They've put together a set of questions, and then anyone can respond, and then they have a methodology to choose the best fit. In contrast, there are unsolicited proposals, which is primarily what you and I will be dealing with, where we're approaching them kind of out of the blue about a relationship that they probably hadn't considered. What's interesting, though, is sometimes if you work with governmental entities, let's say that we're making a pitch to a city government. Most cities have what's called an EDC, an Economic Development Corporation. Those EDCs are often funded with tax money, and they're meant to help attract and grow small businesses in that community. So it's possible that you and I, with your branch office, we go to an EDC that's in your county, your territory, And they say, oh, well, we can't just work with you directly. We have to issue a proposal. My point is, there's been many, many times that we actually helped the city develop the proposal. Therefore, the questions that they were so it became a solicited proposal, but the questions that they were asking obviously matched to what we do. But regardless, not to go too deep, the key is I need you to think about if you're wanting to run a branch office. Like yesterday and earlier this week, we talked about credentialing. So if you're going to have a branch office, that office is going to have to meet some basic requirements, such as locked doors, especially in the rooms whereby confidential client information is kept, needs to be locked, not available to the public. We need to have a locked file cabinet. We need to have a shredder. We need to have passwords on the computer that has confidential information. The passwords typically need to be reset on every 30-day basis using a combination of alphanumeric and symbols. We have the checklist, so we can help you pass the credentialing. But that was more of just the logistical constraints. Here we're talking about giving you a greater insight of now that we have that branch office open, how are we going to drive some amazing volume through? And it's through proposals. So, in summary, the proposal tells the whole story. Why do we need the whole story? Because a lot of times, who you're presenting the proposal to is not the lone decision maker, like the example I gave. We present the proposal to the local chamber executive director, but he or she probably has to present that to the board of directors. And so we want to not leave that executive director with having to become a program expert. Instead, they bring the proposal to the executive director or to the board of directors. Okay. And so we've got different types of proposals for each type of situation, and then our contact information is the same. Let's go ahead and open it up to Q&A. I want to allow enough time. We've ran a bit long on the lecture side this past week. So what questions do any of you have about getting your branch office open? Or if it's a good fit, maybe you're better off to just be a dabbler as a reseller, and that's perfectly fine. But if you have questions about the branch office, which is clearly our focus going forward, because we want committed professionals in each community across the country. By doing that, we're going to have much greater market penetration than people that are just dabblers. So again, if you want to be a dabbler, be a dabbler. You don't need to worry about proposals. You wouldn't be supported in working with key influencers. But my point today is those of you that are considering running a branch office, what do you need to know? And then I see B's asking, so if you're interested in running a branch office, go to 509pacific.org and then just scroll down a bit. There's a couple videos that they want you to watch, and you can even join the live Zooms, which is what we're on right now. Some people will be listening to this afterwards, but there's 4 resources that they'd like you to watch first, and then fill this out, and then you check the appropriate box. So have I viewed the 4 resources, yes or no? Am I interested in a branch office or being a reseller? You wouldn't be both. You'd be one or the other. And then some people want to help us kind of develop the branch offices, which is great. Okay, so that answered, I think, B's question. Stephanie's asking about branding. That's right. So the branch office, it's not a franchise model. So it's not like becoming a McDonald's restaurant. So as a branch office, you're operating under your own branding. So when we go back to the 3 mandates, you're going out and educating in your community under your branding. You're offering the free shelf corps in the community under your branding, and then we're your back office. We're doing the work, we're doing the fulfillment. So great question, Stephanie. So that relaxes it a lot, because if we were offering a franchise, it would be very expensive. This is not. And then secondly, there'd be all these rules you had to comply with. We don't have to worry about that. All right, Matthew asked the timeline, and that's a great question. And the questions we most often get is money and time, which I guess makes sense. Well, the timeline's going to vary, right? So if you're going to open a branch office, what's going to happen is we're going to come out, we're going to do the on-site training there at your office and also knock out the credentialing checklist. And again, we're here to help you be successful. So we're not here to tell you no, but we need to make sure that the branch office meets those basic credentialing standards similar to what I summarized earlier today and earlier this week. So at that time, we'll be doing the in-person training and the market planning. So we would decide at that time, Matthew, okay, who are the key influencers we want to prioritize? Those that have the greatest influence, of course, are the most important, and we'll have to prioritize. I don't know if any of you have ever worked in the medical industry, but in the medical industry, there's pharmaceutical reps. And so I used to, well, I'll just say I used to own a therapy company, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech pathology. Those three kind of go together. So I owned in Southwest Missouri a rehab company, not drug rehab or not mental rehab, but physical rehab. So anyway, so there's all these doctors and all these hospitals that was relevant for us to get referrals. And so we had to prioritize. And so we paid the most attention to those that had the most influence, that had the most potential patients to refer. Similar to what we're going to do with your branch, we're going to assess in your marketplace who are the most important influencers and spend the most time with them. And so then that's where we're going to get these proposals out into their hands. None of that was really Matthew's question. Matthew's question was, well, how long does it take from the time that we submit the proposal until they say yes? Well, there's not a standardized answer, right? So if we're going to a bank, there's two ways to work with a bank. One is just to work at the individual banker level. The other is to establish something more broadly with the bank. It's much more difficult and time consuming to get something at the high level of the bank, but it's relatively easy, quick, and painless to get a relationship at the individual banker level. You might say, oh, I want it with the whole bank. Well, that's more complicated, and really it's not necessary because the whole bank isn't working with the bank applicants, it's the individual business banker. So what we would do is drill in quickly to the key business bankers, and we could generate a flow of referrals within a week. So it's not a long drawn out. But going to a chamber, if you go to a chamber, then we're going to have to get on the board's agenda. They may or may not want you there. Usually not. Just the proposal will do the trick, and maybe the board doesn't meet but once a month. So there's not a simple answer for timing. But remember, as a branch office, we can get up and operating immediately, doing the same things that our resellers are doing, and then overlay in the proposal key influencer model. So we can start making money day one, but it can take a while to ramp up and get all these relationships set up, of course. Jay asked about the training. Yeah, so myself or one of the other advisors will fly in, will do your credentialing audit. We're going to make sure you pass, but we need to do the audit. We will do the training, and we'll do the market planning with you. And then Jay also asked a cap on rent for the office space. Well, you're managing the P&L. We went more into that yesterday than today, but it's up to you. If you want a very modest office or a large office, small expense or large expense, it's up to you. I can tell you our story. We started modest. We bought a piece of land that had a small commercial building on it. And then we had a bunch of people that really ridiculed our building, and of course they didn't have their own building, but our building wasn't good enough. Well, we're almost ready to move into our new building, which is built on the same property. But I guess in the end, perception matters. But I don't think size is as important, but considering location, how visible it is, it's certainly best to have a visible office because then you get drive-by exposure as well. Um, Yaman's asking about capacity. That's right. So the more branch offices we have, the more financial literacy that's going to be done in communities. That's true. And the more free shelf corps that we're going to give away, that's true. And then the more funding that we're going to do. One of our constraints has been space, but we're about to get past that. We have the alarm company coming out today to set up the security system in the new office building. Yesterday, we had the sign company. We're putting a big monument sign, one of those big 6 feet by 6 feet signs out. So we're in the final steps. But the point is, we'll have the space to have the staff to take care of the volume. So no worries about that. Stephanie's asking about the licensing fee. Yeah, we talked about the licensing fee in the prior training. So the license fee is normally 20,000. They're running a 50% off promotion through July 15th, which of course is 10,000. Of that, all you need to do is put 1,000 down, and then they'll set up financing for the rest. So your out of pocket would be 1,000. Now, yesterday we talked, Stephanie, about ways to not even pay the 1,000, but I would refer you back to yesterday's training if you missed it. It's on the YouTube channel. So theoretically, you could have a branch with zero out of pocket if you leverage the joint equity model we talked about yesterday. Otherwise, you'd pay the 1,000 deposit, hold it, and then we can do financing for the rest. All right, let's see here. Stephanie also asked next steps. Well, what will happen is normally within a 24-hour turnaround, all of these forms that are filled out, then we respond. And so we need to respond based upon what the form participant or submitter request. Are they wanting a branch office? Then great, we send them the branch office information. If not, they want to be a reseller, which we're minimizing that because that's not really where we want to go. But they can become a reseller and we'll send them that packet. And there's no cost to be a reseller, not even a contract to sign. Be open for business same day. So the timeline is we'll be following up with each participant based upon what they tell us they want to do. If they say that they want a branch office, then we send them a form via text. They fill out the form, and that's where they'll put in the county and the state. Because remember, we have an exclusive model, so we're only going to have one branch office per county per state. So when you submit that form, then we can confirm if it's available or not. All right, so let's see what's next here. Yeah, and Matthew's making a point. So if you're going to run a branch office, this I don't want to say it's a full-time commitment on your part, but it needs to be a full-time office. It needs to be a full-time office because otherwise let someone else come run it. You can be a dabbler, be a reseller. So the branch office needs to be open on a full-time basis. Doesn't mean that it has to be your only endeavor. The branch offices are obviously designed, as we've talked about before, to generate, I guess we didn't put it on today's agenda, but to generate at least 100,000 a month, at least 1.2 million a year. So it's worthwhile. So there are expectations, as Matthew's pointing out, that if you're going to run a branch office, it's a serious deal. Very profitable, but it's not for dabblers. And so that's really what we needed. I think before we frustrated some of you, a lot of you are dabblers and you're resellers, and we were trying to encourage you to be a high performer, and some of you just aren't wired that way. So now the high performers become branch offices, the low performers or others can remain as resellers. But yes, Matthew's right. There are expectations that you're going to be active with that branch office. Otherwise, don't do the branch office. Don't do it. All right, so let me know, Matthew, if I missed that. Kenneth asked about the YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel we have has all of our trainings. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop. And we're very transparent, right? So if someone's interested in using the free shelf corp to get funding as a client or as a grant participant, it's okay that they understand how the backside works. We're very transparent. So we have some people that are clients and not branch offices or not distribution partners, some that are distribution partners, not clients, and then some people do both. But everything goes to one spot because we want to be very transparent. There's no passwords to be able to access. The world can see it. Yaman's correct. So on the branch offices, because what we had been doing with the resellers is getting our top resellers together for in-person events. We're going to stop doing that for resellers and do that only for the branch offices. So we will have quarterly get-togethers in different locations across the country. So you'll be able to network with other branch offices. I think that's what Yaman's asking is, hey, how do you network with these others? And so we're going to be actively facilitating that. So if you're interested in a branch office, get plugged in and you'll have access to that. Darius wants an explanation of number 2. Okay, so number 2, I guess, would have been from the agenda. And Darius, are you asking about number 2 here, number 2 here, or number 2 here? I'm going to assume it's this one, but let me know if I have it wrong. So as we've been talking about quite a bit, we are a 501c3. We received a grant, and the grant allows us to provide a free shelf corp to entrepreneurs, and that's important. And maybe to Darius it doesn't make sense, but it's incredibly important. A lot of small business owners, they want money. They need money. That's a fact. But what do you need to get money? You need to have a fundable business. You need to qualify. Well, most of them don't. So that's where you'll see up here when you look at the information from more of the client's perspective, we provide a free shelf corp to the grant participants, and it's including the elements to have a fundable business. So it's including the business entity that's good, that's clean, that's compliant. We put together the business plan for them, the financial projections. We provide them a free commercial address. They pay for the mail forwarding, but they get the address free. We provide collateral. So it's that infrastructure or that foundational element that's needed before we can go to funding. That's why most small businesses never get funded. That's why they need our program, is that you can't just skip having a fundable business. So let's even label it differently. So we provide them a fundable business. Now, frankly, they could have a fundable business on their own, just usually they don't. That's why it's so important. I realize, Darius and others, people say, well, I'll skip step 2, just get me the money. Just get me the money. Well, do you qualify? Do you have a fundable business? Hardly ever do they. Therefore, number 2 is important to be able to get number 3. And so with the grant, but before June 1st, individuals had to pay $10,000 for the shelf corp. And we sold thousands of them at $10,000. Now the grant reimbursed them after they went through funding, but that required the people to pay it up front, or they could finance it, but they had to pay for it. As of June 1st, the grant was modified, and so since June 1st, they don't have to pay for it. The grant covers it up front rather than being a reimbursement. So the only outlay they have to get the shelf corp is the processing fee. And as I mentioned, you all determine what that is. So I don't think you could ever complain that it's too much or too little because you determine your pricing. All right, so with that being said, we'll be back tomorrow on Friday. We're opening the new branch in Columbus, Ohio on Monday. So we will not have a Zoom Monday the 14th, but as long as flights are on time, I don't get back until like midnight at the end of Monday, beginning of Tuesday. So as long as the flight's not delayed, then we'll be back together Tuesday morning. If for some reason the flight's delayed, then Tuesday's in jeopardy, but most likely not. So we're good tomorrow on Friday, none over the weekend, be in Columbus Monday, and then back online Tuesday. So we'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.